In the summer of 2012, I was fortunate enough to study abroad in the northeast of France, in a small town called Douai. I stayed with a fellow student, Edouard Monges, or as my father would say, Eddie Manguez, which always brought up unpleasant images of mangoes in my mind. Anyways, I stayed with him and his very French family. Eddie and I became what one might refer to as best friends. This friendship developed for three very important reasons. 1. We got along really well. 2. He really was interested in American culture, as was I in French culture. And 3. I didn't speak French, so he had to be with me or I would get kidnapped or something fun like that. During my time overseas, I discovered something. I'm very American, but so is France. I went to France expecting to see very classic, refined, and stereotypically rude culture. But to my surprise, this was not the case. Apart from all the baguettes and cheese, the young culture in France is very much focused on wearing Levi's, Abercrombie & Fitch, and listening to the US pop artists with a dash of disco. I'd never really taken time to examine the culture that I had always been a part of, but now that it was thrust upon me, I had an opportunity to look at myself in the eye. Being the only American in the area, I naturally felt a little bit out of place during my study abroad. But one day, I sat down and talked with Eddie about politics within our two nations. I was surprised to find how the French people as a whole were unapproving of their government. He told me that the new president, François Hollande, and his policies were a constant source of frustration. This reminded me of the US President, Barack Obama, and his ever-dropping approval ratings. I guess there are some similarities between us. Anyways, Eddie also told me that the French, they view Americans all as carrying guns on their hips, wearing cowboy hats, and singing the Star-Spangled Banner every time they wake up in the morning. After I explained to him that none of these stereotypes are actually true, he reacted with genuine surprise. Hearing these false stereotypes that are attached to Americans really opened my eyes to the cultural norms that I had always taken for granted. I began to see how my nationality as an American affects the way I see the world. Being in one of the most affluent nations on the planet, I can hardly relate to third world problems that result from life's basic necessities, such as water, food, and shelter. The cultural experience that I had in France opened my mind to the way that I and other Americans live, and how that lifestyle compares with the rest of the world. Some of the aspects I noticed about my culture, quite frankly, disgusted me, while some things, most things I guess, made me proud. Simply put, I am grateful that something just clicked in France that allowed me to appreciate my history and culture. I am proud to be an American.